I didn't set out to question the foundations of architectural history. I'm not that person. I believed what I was taught, that humanity's technological progress moved in a straight line, that each generation improved upon the last, that our current understanding of electricity and energy transmission represented the pinnacle of human achievement. But then I stood beneath the dome of a 19th century courthouse in Indiana, and something didn't add up. The dome rose above me like a copper-clad mountain, its surface oxidized to that distinctive green patina. Spires jutted from the corners, each one capped with metal orbs and pointed finials that seemed to reach for the sky with deliberate intention. The entire structure hummed, not metaphorically, but actually vibrated at a frequency I could feel in my chest. The official explanation? Decorative elements typical of the Beaux-Arts style. Decorative. That word haunted me, because nothing about this building felt decorative. Every element seemed engineered with precision that bordered on obsession. The metal compositions weren't random. The geometric proportions weren't aesthetic choices. The placement of conductive materials along specific pathways through the structure wasn't coincidence. The deeper I looked, the more the official narrative began to collapse. Let me show you what I mean. Take the dome. Not just any dome, but the specific architectural pattern that appears with unsettling precision across 6 continents. St. Petersburg, Russia. Massive copper domes atop government buildings, each crowned with golden spires that terminate in conductive points. Melbourne, Australia. Identical design principles, same metal compositions, same geometric ratios. San Francisco, Buenos Aires, Budapest, Kolkata. The pattern repeats, and repeats, and repeats. These aren't similar buildings, they're the same building. Built according to the same specifications, using the same materials, following the same mathematical principles. The domes aren't just copper sheets hammered into shape. They're layered systems. Copper on the outside, often with gold leaf or gilding at specific points. Iron frameworks beneath. Stone foundations that extend impossibly deep into the earth, far deeper than structural support would require. Ask yourself, why does a courthouse in Indiana need a foundation that descends 40 feet into bedrock? Why does a government building in Tasmania require 3 layers of different metals in its dome? Why do all of these structures, built supposedly by different architects in different countries who had no contact with each other, employ the same exact proportions? The official explanation collapses here. We're told these are products of architectural fashion, that the Beaux-Arts movement simply spread worldwide. But fashion doesn't dictate engineering specifications. Fashion doesn't require specific metal alloys. Fashion doesn't demand that every building be sited at precise distances from water sources, or that their foundations must reach certain depths, regardless of soil conditions. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let me walk you through the components, not as an architect sees them, but as an electrical engineer might. The domes, copper, excellent conductor of electricity, second only to silver. These aren't decorative caps, they're massive conductive surfaces positioned at the highest point of each structure. The patina that forms, that's copper oxide, which actually improves certain conductive properties over time. Many domes show evidence of gold or gilt application at the apex, at the exact point where a lightning rod would be placed on a modern building. Gold, superior conductor, doesn't oxidize, lasts indefinitely. The spires, metal rods extending from corners and central points, often terminating in spheres or sharp points. The official explanation calls them finials, decorative elements, but examine their construction. Solid metal cores, often running deep into the structure itself, connected to metal frameworks that web through the entire building, positioned at cardinal points with geometric precision. These aren't decorations, they're antennas, collectors, conductors, the stone, limestone, granite, marble, all chosen for specific properties beyond aesthetics. Limestone contains calcite, a piezoelectric material that generates electrical charge under pressure. Granite contains quartz crystals that can store and release energy. The stones aren't randomly selected. They're engineered components chosen for properties we've learned to ignore. The metals, brass doorknobs, bronze fixtures, copper gutters and downspouts that run to foundation depths. Iron railings connected to bronze elements through careful joinery. Aluminum details that shouldn't exist. Aluminum was rarer than gold in the 19th century, yet these buildings are studded with it, and always the metals connect. They form pathways, circuits. The pattern becomes impossible to ignore when you map it. The conductive elements don't exist in isolation. They connect. Dome to spire, spire to railing, railing to foundation, foundation to earth, foundation to water. One continuous conductive pathway from sky to ground, engineered with precision that our ancestors supposedly didn't possess. If you're finding this investigation compelling, consider subscribing or becoming a member. Your support helps preserve research that was never meant to be seen. Here's where it gets stranger. These buildings aren't just built with conductive materials. They're built according to specific geometric ratios. The golden ratio appears constantly, in dome heights relative to base widths, in the spacing of spires, in the proportions of windows to walls. Fibonacci sequences, in the placement of architectural elements, sacred geometry that ancient cultures claimed could harness and direct energy. The Parthenon, the pyramids, Gothic cathedrals, and now these 19th century civic buildings, all following the same mathematical principles, all incorporating the same geometric relationships, all using the same resonant frequencies in their spatial proportions. Modern architects will tell you this is about aesthetics, about beauty, about classical revival. But beauty doesn't require mathematical precision to the millimetre. Beauty doesn't demand that every angle be calculated to fractions of a degree. Beauty doesn't necessitate that the entire structure resonates at specific frequencies when wind passes through its corridors. These buildings hum, they vibrate, they respond to atmospheric conditions. Stand inside one during a thunderstorm and you can feel it in your bones. The entire structure seems to awaken, to conduct, to channel something through its framework from sky to earth. Why? This is where the official history becomes untenable. Between 1850 and 1910, these structures appeared worldwide. Not gradually, not with clear lines of influence, but simultaneously. The same designs, the same materials, the same engineering specifications. From San Francisco to St. Petersburg, from Melbourne to Montreal, the pattern repeats with variations so minor they appear to be working from identical blueprints. The official narrative asks us to believe in coincidence on a global scale. That architects who never met somehow developed identical solutions. That builders working with supposedly primitive tools achieved identical precision. That separate governments funded identical projects without coordination, without communication, without any evidence of knowledge transfer. The coordination problem becomes unsolvable. How do you explain identical metal compositions in buildings separated by oceans? How do you account for the same foundation depths, the same geometric ratios, the same conductive pathways being built simultaneously by cultures that supposedly had no contact? How do you rationalize the fact that these buildings appear to be nodes in a network positioned at specific intervals, oriented to precise cardinal directions, all without any documented plan or purpose? You can't. Not without acknowledging what the evidence screams. These buildings were part of a system, a coordinated, engineered global system, a system designed to do something we've been taught was impossible without copper wires and power plants. And here's the strangest part. After 1910, it stops, not gradually, abruptly. The construction of these buildings ceases almost overnight. The engineering specifications vanish from architectural journals. The mathematical principles disappear from textbooks. And the buildings themselves, many were demolished, others were modernized. their metal components removed, their domes replaced with modern materials, their foundations filled in. The San Francisco City Hall, original copper dome removed in 1917, replaced with a steel frame and concrete shell. Dozens of government buildings across America, metal spires removed as unnecessary or dangerous. European structures stripped of conductive elements during restoration projects that destroyed more than they preserved. The official explanations vary. Safety concerns, changing architectural fashions, modernization, progress. But the pattern tells a different story. The demolitions weren't random. They targeted specific types of buildings. Those with the most elaborate conductive systems, the deepest foundations, the most precise geometric specifications, and the timing. It coincides exactly with the rise of centralized electrical power grids, with the establishment of power companies, with the transition to wired electrical distribution. This raises a simple but critical question. What if these buildings threatened something? What if their very existence contradicted a new system being implemented? What if they demonstrated a technology that was being actively replaced? The evidence accumulates with each example we examine. The implications grow harder to dismiss. Let me be clear about what I'm suggesting. These buildings, with their copper domes, metal spires, conductive pathways, geometric precision, and impossible foundations, they weren't designed for the purposes we've been taught. Not primarily. The courthouses, the government buildings, the World's Fair pavilions, these weren't just civic structures. They were infrastructure. Energy infrastructure. The evidence suggests they were designed to channel, store, and transmit electrical energy without wires. The domes as collectors, gathering atmospheric electricity, lightning, electromagnetic fields from the ionosphere. The spires as receivers and transmitters positioned at cardinal points to create a directional system. The metal pathways as conductors, moving energy through the structure. The stone foundations as capacitors storing charge in piezoelectric and crystalline matrices. The geometric precision creating resonant frequencies that amplified and focused the energy. A wireless energy system, global, coordinated, functional, and then erased. Not destroyed completely, that would be too obvious. Instead, redefined. The buildings remain, but their purpose has been buried beneath layers of historical revision. We're taught they're beautiful, historic, architectural achievements. We're told the metals are decorative, the geometry is aesthetic, the engineering is primitive. We're shown photographs of construction and told to believe in scaffolding and horsepower and human labor achieving what would challenge our modern capabilities. The silence was deafening. No debate about the transition from this supposed system to wired electricity. No discussion of why thousands of precisely engineered buildings were suddenly obsolete. No explanation for how decorative elements that cost fortunes to install became expendable overnight. Just a quiet rewriting of history that left the buildings standing as monuments to a past we can see, but are taught not to understand. When you search for primary sources, the gaps become obvious. Construction records, vague or missing. We have elaborate documentation of far less significant buildings, but these massive structures appear in the historical record almost fully formed. Foundation diagrams rarely preserved. Original architectural specifications lost in fires, floods, or simply misplaced. The engineering journals from this period, they discuss the buildings in terms so generic they could describe any structure. What we do have are photographs, thousands of photographs showing these buildings under construction. And in those photographs, something extraordinary appears, these massive structures being built with remarkably little visible machinery. Small crews, simple scaffolding, no evidence of the enormous industrial effort that should have been required. It's as if they were being assembled, not built, assembled from components manufactured elsewhere according to specifications that pre-existed the projects themselves. Components designed to fit together in precise ways to create specific systems. And when the systems were no longer needed or no longer wanted, the components were removed and the buildings were redefined. I stand again beneath that dome in Indiana, the copper surface above me green with age, the spires reaching toward clouds, the metal pathways running through walls I can't see but can feel somehow, like a current just beneath perception. And I'm left with questions that official history cannot answer. Why did humanity build these structures with such precision, such coordination, such identical purpose across the entire globe? Why did they stop so abruptly? Why were the conductive elements removed? Why has the engineering knowledge behind them been so thoroughly forgotten? What did these buildings do? Not what were they used for after they were redefined as civic structures, but what were they engineered to do originally? What technology did they embody? What system did they serve? And perhaps most unsettling, who decided that this system should end? Who coordinated its dismantling? Who rewrote the history? And why has no one questioned the narrative we've inherited? A narrative that tells us our ancestors built magnificent energy infrastructure as decoration, then forgot how they did it. The deeper I've gone into this investigation, the more I've realized we didn't invent electrical power distribution. We replaced it. We replaced a system we can still see in the architecture around us with a system that requires copper wires, power plants, and centralized control. We replaced something that was free, distributed, and already built with something that could be owned, metered, and sold. And then we forgot. Or we were made to forget. The buildings remain, silent witnesses to a technology we've been taught never existed. Their domes still gleaming, their spires still reaching, their foundations still extending deep into the earth, connecting to aquifers and bedrock in ways we're told are meaningless. But once you see it, once you understand the pattern, the precision, the impossible global coordination, you can't unsee it. These buildings were designed to conduct electricity. The knowledge was erased, and the evidence is hiding in plain sight, in every courthouse square, in every government building, in every structure crowned with copper and bristling with metal spires that we pass every day without seeing what they truly are. Ask yourself, what else have we forgotten? What other technologies are hiding in our architecture, in our infrastructure, in the buildings we've inherited but no longer understand? The answers are there, in the metal, in the stone, in the geometric precision of structures built according to specifications we've lost. We just see them,